First appearing in Journey into Mystery number 83 from 1962. Thor has enhanced strength, near invulnerability, longevity, and vast magical abilities provided by the Odin Force. He wields the unbreakable hammer of Mjolnir, which can open interdimensional portals, permit flight, channel storms, and fire energy blasts. Thor was the god of thunder, the beloved champion of Asgard, and a figure of worship among the ancient Norse. He was born to Odin, the ruler of Asgard, and Gaia, the mother goddess of Earth. Thor loved his people, but when he discovered that they were stuck in an endless repeating cycle, he broke it by triggering their destruction in the end battle of Ragnarok. Groomed to assume his father's throne, Thor later grew up with his best friend Balder and his first love, Sif. But Thor's half-brother Loki hated him, and schemed to become the ruler of Asgard himself. When Thor proved himself worthy of carrying the Uru hammer Mjolnir, he took up the identity as the Thunder God. Thor mingled with his earthly worshippers throughout the 9th century, leading the Vikings into battle. He later abandoned his followers after several of them butchered members of the Christian monastery. After the succeeding centuries, he spent most of his time in Asgard, venturing to Earth to battle Loki in the Old West and mistakenly becoming a pawn of the Nazis during World War II. Deciding that his son needed to learn humility before assuming the title of Allfather, Odin exiled Thor to Earth. There, the Thunder God believed himself to be the mortal doctor Donald Blake, and walked with the aid of a wooden cane. When he stuck the cane on the ground, it transformed into Mjolnir, and Thor regained his powers and memories of his life on Asgard. For years, he lived a dual identity as Thor and Blake, battling threats such as Radioactive Man and the Absorbing Man. Loki sought to entrap Thor by drawing him into the conflict with the Hulk, but only succeeded in uniting a group of heroes that would become the Avengers. Thor became a founding member of the team, and fought alongside such heroes as Captain America, Iron Man, and Hercules. Few beings ever bested Thor in combat, but the alien Beta Ray Bill defeated the Thunder God and proved worthy of wielding the hammer of Mjolnir. Impressed, Odin forged a new hammer, Stormbreaker, for Bill to wield. Thor gave up his Blake alter ego at this time, briefly trying out a new identity as a construction worker, Sigurd Jarrison. New trials continued to vex Thor. His father Odin seemingly perished in combat against the fire demon Surtur, but Thor refused the throne, the honor passing to Balder. Thor then suffered terrible torment when a curse rendered him incapable of death. Wounds nearly disintegrated his body until the spell was reversed. The events that led to the end of Asgard began with the true death of Odin, killed battling Surtur. Thor took up the mantle of rulership, and became empowered with the mystical Odin Force. Wishing to take a more direct role over earthly affairs, Thor moved Asgard to Earth and transformed the planet into a dictatorship that endured for 200 years. At last, realizing the error of his actions, he unwound the previous 2 centuries through time travel. Loki enlisted Surtur to forge new weapons comparable in power to Mjolnir. He rallied his followers and conquered Asgard. Thor, realizing that Loki's actions presaged the final conflagration of Ragnarok, followed the Odin Force on a spiritual journey. The Thunder God uncovered the truth of the Ragnarok cycle. Its endless loop of creation and rebirth had been orchestrated by the godlike those who sit above in shadow for their amusement. Unwilling to endure his people's dishonor through yet another cycle, Thor severed the tapestry that wove the reality of Asgard's dimension, wiping himself and Asgard from existence. Desperate for Thor's power during the Civil War, Mr. Fantastic and Hank Pym created a biomechanical Thor clone. It proved hard to control and killed Giant Man. It also attacked the 50 State Initiative's headquarters at Camp Hammond. Later, in the void of the afterlife, Thor reunited with his old alter ego Donald Blake and returned to Earth, rebuilding Asgard on an island floating in the sky of Oklahoma. He then set out to find the other gods, who now lived unknowingly as mortals, and restore them to their rightful places. Loki brought Odin's father Bor back from the dead and tricked him into attacking everything in sight. Thor was forced to kill Bor, unaware that he was his grandfather. Since Bor had technically become the ruler of Asgard upon his return, Balder, who had previously assumed rule of Asgard with Thor's blessing, had to banish Thor from the home of the Norse gods. With Thor gone, Loki persuaded Balder to evacuate the Asgardians to Latveria, the home of his ally Dr. Doom, another member of the Cabal. Thor's hammer Mjolnir had been damaged during the battle with Bor, and he asked Doctor Strange to help repair him. They managed this by transferring some of Thor's power to Mjolnir, strengthening the bond between them. With Mjolnir fixed, Thor finally managed to find the lost goddess Sif and return her to the body that Loki had stolen from her. Angry with Loki, Baldur ordered his people back to Asgard. Loki persuaded the leader of the Cabal, Norman Osborn, that the return of the Norse gods to the skies above Oklahoma presented a threat to his power as head of national security. Loki convinced Osborn by staging a fight between the UFOs and Vostag that killed tens of thousands of innocents during a football game at Chicago's Soldier Field. Osborn decided to launch a preemptive assault on Asgard. Despite his banishment, Thor joined the fight to defend Asgard against Hammer and Osborn's villainous team of Dark Avengers, buttressed by Daken and Sentry. During the battle, Sentry razed Asgard, reducing it to rubble, and his dark side, embodied as the evil and powerful Void, threatened to destroy the world. Even Loki decided that this was too much, and he tried to help the Avengers with the magic of the Norn stones. Once the Void figured this out, he slew Loki. Enraged, Thor kept the Void busy long enough for Iron Man to crash the Hammer helicarrier into him. After Sentry's death, Thor wrapped him in his cape and hurled his old friend into the sun. In return for his service, Baldur lifted Thor's banishment. Thor learned that Loki's spirit was not in hell, and he set out to find him. He located him in a boy's body in Paris, reborn without any memories of his past, including his many misdeeds. Thor brought this kid Loki back to Asgard, and sought to protect him from the hostility the other gods still harbored from. Thor later brought Odin back to life too. The Allfather was furious with Loki for what he had done, and with Thor for bringing them both back when he could have lived in peace. When the event known as Fear itself began with the return of Odin's brother Kal, also known as the Serpent, Odin retreated from Earth and created a new Asgard in a realm separate so that he and his people could prepare for war with the Serpent and his generals, known as the Worthy. Thor remained on Earth, against his father's wishes, and led the fight against Kal and his forces. In the end, he slew the Serpent, but at the cost of his own life, as Odin had prophesied long ago. In his grief, Odin sealed himself up alone in Asgard and gave rule of his people to Freyja, Gaia, and Idun, a trinity of all mothers. From the fires of Thor's funeral pyre emerged Tanaris, a new thunder god whom everyone but Loki remembered as the god of Thor had been. This turned out to be a trick of the sorceress Karnilla, who had substituted the rock troll Uluk in Thor's place. With the help of the Silver Surfer, Loki hunted down Thor's old alter ego, Donald Blake, and brought his brother back to life. Together they revealed Karnilla's treachery and stopped a troll attack on Asgardia. Soon after, Thor tangled with Gorr the God Butcherer, an alien god who amassed power through the destruction of other gods. Gorr planned to detonate a god bomb that would destroy every god in space and time. He enslaved scores of gods to build it for him, including Thor and his younger and older selves. With all the gods praying to him, Thor managed to foil Gorr's plot. When Utu the Watcher was slain, Gorr made Thor believe he was unworthy of his hammer or the role of a god. Realizing the world needed a Thor, Jane Foster picked up Mjolnir and was transformed into a female Thor. Joining a new Avengers team, this Thor formed a close friendship with Sam Wilson, who became one of the few people to know her secret identity. Thor fought Roxxon's forces, the Absorbing Man, and the Destroyer, the latter being sent by a furious Odin convinced that Jane was an imposter. Unknown to many, Jane had cancer, and every time she transformed into Thor, it compromised her chemotherapy. Yet as her mortal health deteriorated, she seemed to be needed as Thor more than ever, especially as Malekith, the Dark Elf, started a war against the Ten Realms. When the cancer was close to claiming Foster's life, the monster Mangog attacked the Asgardians' new home, Asgardia. Knowing full well that transforming would kill her mortal foe, Jane became Thor once again and defeated Mangog, changing back to Jane Foster and dying shortly afterward. However, just before her death, Jane convinced the original Thor to reclaim his role, handing him a piece of the shattered Mjolnir to prove he was now worthy. Even Odin was impressed by Jane's bravery and refused to let her die, using his powers to save her life. Thor returned to the role of Thunder God, helping the gods make a stand against the forces of Malekith. Comment down below what videos you would like to see in the future, and what you've thought of Thor in the MCU so far. Remember to like the video, and subscribe for more Marvel content, and follow me on my various platforms listed in the description. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow.